You wake up and your throat is burning. Your nose is dripping like a leaky faucet. You drag yourself to the bathroom cabinet, grab some pain pills, pop a decongestant, and you are back on your feet by noon. Imagine none of that exists. No doctor, no hospital 3 miles away. No Google to tell you if your headache is stress or, according to some online search, a rare brain parasite. Just you, a deep forest, and whatever clever ideas your ancestors had to keep themselves alive. And the wild part is, they did, for hundreds of thousands of years. Before any antibiotics, before surgery, before anyone had any real understanding of what germs were, humans survived, raised families, built civilizations, and somehow did not drop dead the very second someone caught a cold. How on earth did they pull that off? Before we begin, we have to change how we view ancient medicine. Here is the trap we usually fall into. We picture ancient humans as just like us, but without technology, like cavemen standing around wishing, "Man, I really wish we had penicillin right now." But that is not how it went. They were not foolish. They were incredibly observant, highly practical. And they had one tool we often underestimate: thousands of years of painful trial and error. When you live in nature, and death is a constant daily threat, you learn to pay attention. You notice which herb makes the stomach pain stop. You see which root helps a wound heal faster. You learn that drinking from a river downstream of a dead animal is a bad idea. That knowledge was passed down through the generations. Grandma, grandmother to granddaughter, healer to apprentice. No textbooks back then, but it was locked inside something just as powerful: human memory and local traditions. That sparked a system of healing that, while lacking modern grasp of biology, was actually shockingly good at treating many conditions. And for the stuff they could not fix, well, that is where things get really wild. Let us start with the most common tool ancient humans had: plants. And this is not pseudoscience. This is not some woo-woo hippie stuff. This is real-deal pharmacology with a deep history stretching back at least 60,000 years. And we have the archaeological proof to back it up. In 1960, a Neanderthal burial site was found inside a cave in Iraq called Shanidar. Inside that grave, scientists discovered massive piles of pollen from several plants like yarrow, groundsel, ephedra, and others. To best guess, these were not just random weeds blowing in. They were deliberately placed. And here is the wild part. Several of those exact plants are still used as herbal remedies today. Some have been scientifically studied and proven to have real medicinal benefits. Imagine Neanderthals doing herbal healing before modern humans even arrived in that corner of the world. Let that sink in for a moment. Once modern humans finally arrived, plant-based healing grew incredibly sophisticated. Take willow bark, which contains salicin. The compound that modern aspirin is based on was used throughout ancient Egypt, Greece, China, and indigenous North America to soothe pain and fevers independently on totally separate continents, because people realized, chew this bark, pain goes away. Simple cause and effect, repeated millions of times over thousands of years. Garlic worked as an antibiotic for ancient Egyptians, and science actually proves it has real power to fight off bacteria. Then, turmeric, used for ages in Ayurvedic medicine, contains curcumin, showing strong proven anti-inflammatory healing. Plus echinacea, long used by Native American tribes to boost immunity, is still popular at your pharmacy. But think about this. How did they know? Healers weren't just chewing on random plants that seemed interesting. They developed highly advanced preparation methods. They knew which plants to boil and which to avoid. They knew roots worked best when drying. They mixed various herbs in exact ratios, then carefully watched what happened. Some ancient herbal recipes use dozens of unique ingredients. Each played a vital role, some as active cures, some to hide bitter tastes or help absorption, and others to stop side effects. That isn't magic. That is real scientific pharmacology without the fancy labs. These early humans were, in a way, running one massive, global uncontrolled medical trial. The sample size was literally all of humanity. Sure, their methods were chaotic. The toll from bad tests was admittedly super high, but their results turned out surprisingly solid. Now, let's look at what killed people fast. Something our ancestors faced every single day. Wounds, whether from hunting, combat, bad accidents, or just tripping in the dark. Injuries were everywhere, and without modern clean antiseptics or stitches, a minor cut could turn deadly and kill you in days. How did they survive? Well, first up was honey. Egyptians slapping sticky honey onto wounds. And it wasn't just some wild superstition. Honey is genuinely antibacterial, with low pH, dense sugar, and steady release of tiny amounts of natural hydrogen peroxide. All this creates an incredibly hostile environment for nasty bacteria. Surprisingly, modern medicine has rediscovered this. Today, we have medically approved medical honey called Manuka honey, used in actual hospital clinics today. Turns out, those ancient Egyptians weren't wrong. Next, mud and clay. Specific clays, especially those packed with minerals like montmorillonite, pack powerful antimicrobial properties. Tribal cultures all across the planet applied clay poultices to wounds. Again, spot on. Next up, maggots. Okay, breathe. Just hear me out on this. Maggot therapy, where tiny fly larvae are put on infected wounds to eat dead and decaying tissue, was used by indigenous Australians, ancient Mayans in Central America, and battlefield doctors throughout history. It's actually still used today in high-tech hospitals for wounds that refuse to heal with antibiotics. Maggots only eat dead flesh. They leave healthy skin completely untouched. They're incredibly efficient wound cleaning machines. Our ancestors figured this out not because they were crazy, but because they paid close attention. They noticed maggot-infested wounds sometimes healed up much faster than clean ones. Instead of screaming and fleeing, they calmly filed that knowledge away. Then, we have spiderwebs. Several distinct ancient cultures, Greeks, Celts, and Native Americans, slapped cobwebs directly onto open cuts to stop the bleeding. Sounds totally crazy, but spider silk naturally contains vitamin K, which plays a major role in clotting, plus some natural antibacterial properties. Modern scientists are now actively studying spider silk as a biomaterial for wound closure. Once again, our ancient ancestors stumbled onto something real. Honestly, there is more science here than we give them credit for. Now things get really wild. We actually have physical proof, have solid archaeological proof of trepanation. This wild practice of drilling a hole straight into the skull dating back over 9,000 years. Before you ask, yes, the patient survived. We know this because their bones show clear signs of healing around the hole, meaning the person did not just die right on the operating table. Some recovered skulls show multiple surgical holes, meaning the same patient underwent the procedure more than once and survived every single time. Why do this? Well, the theories range from treating head injuries, relieving pressure after major skull fractures, fixing bad headaches or seizures, and let us be honest, probably some spiritual reasons, too. Ancient healthcare and local religion were heavily tangled. Sometimes it is hard to separate where one ended and the other started. But here is what we know sure. They were performing actual brain surgery 9,000 years ago with sharp stone tools, and patients survived it. We also have proof of amputations that healed up beautifully. One skeleton found in France from 7,000 years ago shows a forearm amputation with clear signs of bone regrowth, proving the patient lived long enough for the wound to start healing. That required more than just the surgery itself. It took postoperative care, treating wounds, and keeping infections away, plus feeding and supporting a healing patient. That is not a lucky accident. It is a working medical support system. To put this in perspective, modern antiseptic procedures only became standard quite recently. Standard in the 1860s when Joseph Lister realized that maybe doctors needed to wash their hands before doing surgery. For context, hospitals in the 1840s had higher death rates than battlefield operations because the conditions were so incredibly filthy. Infection risk in a 19th century clinic was actually worse than just staying home and crossing your fingers. Ancient trepanning surgeons working outdoors in fresh air with sterile stone tools likely enjoyed far better sanitary conditions than 19th century European doctors. The universe has a dark sense of humor, but here is something we do not talk about enough when asking this question. Early humans did not just survive thanks to the medicine they used. They made it because of what was inside them. An immune system that was built over millions of years of evolutionary pressure into something unbelievably powerful. Here is the deal with our immune system. It learns and adapts. The more bugs a population gets exposed to over generations, the more the survivors build immunity. Ancient humans were exposed to a massive diversity of microbes from birth, constantly training their biological defenses. Kids who survived childhood, and yes, many did not, became incredibly robust and resilient adults. There is also natural herd immunity without any vaccines. When a disease swept through a tribe repeatedly over generations, the folks who were genetically more resistant to it survived and passed on those genes. Over generations, the population became on average far more resistant to that specific sickness. It was brutal, slow, and cost an incredible amount of death. But hey, it worked. Ever wonder why when Europeans first sailed to the Americas, it was so catastrophically devastating for native populations? Was it because the newcomers were somehow physically superior? Not at all. They just carried smallpox, measles, and influenza, bugs their own populations had spent centuries building defenses against. But indigenous Americans had absolutely zero prior exposure, and no shield passed down. In some areas, the death toll hit 90%. Interestingly, native populations actually had their own immune shields against local bugs that incoming colonists had a brutal time surviving. See, your immune system is ultimately a living diary of what your ancestors survived. And today, modern science is pointing right to the gut microbiome, the trillions of tiny bacteria inside your belly as the central hub for immunity, mood, and overall wellness. Our ancestors actually had an incredibly diverse microbiome by today's standards. Why? Because they ate a crazy, diverse diet of wild plants, fermented foods, and wild game. And they were constantly playing in dirt, absorbing all those natural microbes. They weren't constantly sanitizing everything like we do. Fermented options popped up in nearly every ancient culture. Sure, fermentation started as a clever preservation trick to stop food spoiling. But it also did something magic. It loaded everything with good bacteria. Kimchi, sauerkraut, kefir, and injera. Every single traditional culture had its own version, and each was a powerhouse probiotic that makes our modern gut pills look useless. Recent studies comparing the gut bugs of modern foragers tribes to modern cities, we discover massive differences. Those ancient foragers had dramatically more diverse gut bacteria, and that internal variety is always linked to stronger immune systems, fewer struggles with autoimmune disorders, plus excellent metabolic health. There is a huge wave of new research showing the scary spike in modern allergies, autoimmune struggles, and mental health issues in our current civilized world is actually tied to killing off those crucial microbes in our guts. Thanks to antibiotics, processed food, chemical water, and our endless war on dirt, ancient humans were pretty filthy. They'd lived covered in soil and bacteria, and honestly, that might have been great for their immune systems in surprising ways. Now, this is no excuse to stop washing hands. Definitely keep doing that, but the connection between dirt, bugs, and our health is way more complex than just clean versus dirty. Now, let's explore something that sounds like absolute magic, but carries genuine scientific proof. The placebo effect. If you believe your body will heal, you often do. This isn't just mysticism. This is proven brain science. The effect actually triggers real changes in how we feel pain, immunity, and healing speeds. It even works when people know they are taking fakes. It is one of the strangest, most mind-bending details of human biology. Early tribal healers and shamans, or medicine men, whatever label you choose across various ancient cultures, deeply understood this power. Even just didn't have the words yet. The ceremony surrounding the treatment mattered. The healer's own confidence really mattered. The whole community's backing mattered. The deep belief that action was being taken was crucial. When a shaman performed an intricate ceremony over a sick patient using chanting, sacred herbs, fire symbols, and the active involvement of their entire tribe, something real was happening. Sure, some of it was performance. Yes, modern germ theory was completely missing, but that patient's brain got a massive, undeniable signal. You are being looked after. People are fighting for you. Action is actually being taken. We now know this signal has major physical changes. cortisol drops, immune systems shift, and pain perception drops. Recovery, in many instances, actually improves. Does that mean this ancient spiritual healing was real medicine by today's standards? No. But it wasn't useless either. It was tapping deep into our actual human biology, our body's incredible ability to heal itself under just the right mental conditions. Modern science is finally catching up to this. Good bedside manner has measurable effects on patient recovery. Social support boosts survival rates in cancer patients. That mind-body connection, long brushed off by rigid scientific medicine, is now taken seriously by top researchers. Ancient healers got there first, simply through the natural process of observation and wisdom that gave us willow bark and honey on wounds. But let's be fair, we must discuss the downside. There were things early healers simply could not cure. Bacterial infections that crossed certain lines were a death sentence. Appendicitis, an infected appendix that ruptured appendixes killed folks we now easily save with a quick, 1-hour surgery. Childbirth was exceptionally dangerous for both mother and baby. Tooth infections, reaching the jaw, could actually kill you. A poorly healed broken bone meant living with permanent disability. Infant death rates were mind-blowing. In many ancient societies, somewhere between a quarter to half of children died before growing up. Average lifespans in history books look absolutely brutal, usually averaging 30 to 35 years. But that figure is warped by those early losses. If you survived youth without falling to violence or childbirth, you might easily reach your 50s, 60s, or even 70s. There is clear physical proof of ancient ancestors enduring terrible arthritis, walking on healed fractures, showing major trauma, yet carrying those struggles for decades. Old age was real. It just wasn't guaranteed. And here is the most sobering part. Many of the sicknesses that took lives in the old world are still deadly today in regions of the world without real healthcare access. Malaria, tuberculosis, cholera, severe diarrheal diseases in kids. These aren't just ancient history lessons. They are daily threats for hundreds of millions of living people who lack what you can find within 5 miles of your current seat. Advanced healthcare isn't a luxury. It is easily one of the greatest achievements in human history. The simple truth that minor infection that once spelled death in 1850 is cleared with a 5-day round of pills is incredibly amazing. And we have somehow completely stopped being impressed by it. Let us look closer at some bizarre healing methods of the past, because honestly, they deserve more than a footnote. Take ancient Egyptian healing, written down in the Abers Papyrus from around 1550 BC, describing 700 remedies for different ailments. It actually maps out the cardiovascular system, advanced surgical procedures, and complex pharmaceutical preparations. It mixes real medical insights that hold up today with weird magic spells that definitely do not. But back then, science and religion were completely blended, because those separate categories just didn't exist. Then there is traditional Chinese medicine, built over thousands of years, using acupuncture, herbal remedies, smart diets, and physical therapy. And yes, some of it is proven by science today, some is not, but look at the brilliance of their system. Those centuries of sharp observation, that how they map the body, and the complex catalog of herbal combinations. Then, Ayurvedic healing from ancient India, and even further, identifying healing properties in hundreds of plants, and even perfected surgery, while writing detailed guides on diseases and their cures with mind-blowing detail. Sushruta, a healer around 600 BC, pioneered surgical methods like rhinoplasty, literally rebuilding a nose with such incredible skill that 18th century British doctors actually traveled to India just to learn from local healers who still used his methods. Meanwhile, the Greeks gave us Hippocrates, who championed a radical idea. Famous sickness comes from purely natural, not supernatural forces. Diet, environment, and bodily imbalances, not angry gods, caused your sickness. This idea that the body runs on understandable rules, natural laws we can actually observe and think about, that is literally the core foundation of all modern medicine. Back in Mesopotamia, the oldest medical records we know, clay tablets from ancient Sumer, over 4,000 years old, outline specific herbal remedies for particular symptoms in a way that feels surprisingly clinical, not prayers, but actual prescriptions. Got this specific symptom, brew this exact plant this way, and take it right now. That setup, symptom, remedy, and method is the exact template doctors use today in writing your prescription, just with far less Latin and way more ancient cuneiform. These weren't just random guesses. These were deep intellectual traditions built by brilliant minds over centuries, doing their absolute best with the tools and knowledge they had back then. Ancient people got by without modern drugs because they were never truly left without real medical care. They had plants, lots of which carried genuinely active healing compounds. They had wound care methods that, even without our grasp of microscopic bacteria, were often incredibly effective. They had strong immune systems that had been toughened by generations of fighting off pathogens. They ate fermented foods that kept their gut healthy. Plus, wise healers understood the massive mental power of ritual and community support. They shared accumulated wisdom handed down over thousands of generations. And they had something else. Maybe the absolute most important tool of all: each other. We are not built to get by alone. We are deeply social, biological creatures. And that social connection has massive effects on our survival. Those ancient humans lived in close-knit communities where people looked after the sick and vulnerable, and valued elders for their wisdom. The tribe was their healthcare system. Modern science on isolation constantly shows it is a massive and dangerous threat to your lifespan. Just like smoking, staying isolated kills. True connection heals. And that was true 50,000 years ago too. It is pretty humbling when you really stop to think about it. We have MRI tech, gene sequencing, transplants, and robotic surgery. We defeat plagues that once wiped out whole civilizations. We have done things in the last 150 years that would look like actual magic to any person before 1850. But the basics remain identical. Eat real, whole food. Stay close to your people. Move your body. Handle stress. Sleep well. The advice from your doctor today is basically identical to what a healer said to their patient around a campfire 10,000 years ago. Our tools are vastly different. The human underneath is exactly the same. So, when you marvel at the absolute miracle of today's medicine, and you absolutely should, because it is genuinely incredible, spare a thought for what your ancestors accomplished. Without pharmacies, without hospitals, with zero clue about viruses, they stared at a world crawling with threats that could kill them, but using pure creativity, community, and a wild willingness to try absolutely anything, including, yes, intentionally putting maggots on open wounds. They figured out how to survive. Well, enough of them just long enough to finally produce you. And you, sitting here right now, are the living proof it worked.